नमस्कार। ग्रेटमैन इंटरनेशनल स्कूल की ऑनलाइन क्लासेस में मैं आपका स्वागत करता हूं। कोविड-19 महामारी के इस दौर में मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि आपका परिवार पूरी तरह सुरक्षित है, स्वस्थ है और बच्चों ने लॉकडाउन में बहुत एंजॉय किया है। अब मैं आपका सपोर्ट चाहता हूं। इस ऑनलाइन क्लासेस में बच्चों की शिक्षा को हम अब स्टार्ट करते हैं और बहुत ही जल्द जो भी आपका बैकलॉग है हम उसको क्लियर भी करेंगे और एक नए तरीके से आपकी शिक्षा अब स्टार्ट होने वाली है। पेरेंट्स का हमें पूरा सपोर्ट चाहिए। आप लोग पिछले 10 सालों से लगातार हमें सपोर्ट करते आए हैं और मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि अगर हम और आप मिलकर चाहेंगे तो बच्चों की शिक्षा का कोई नुकसान नहीं होने वाला है और हमें और आपको मिलकर अब एक रीस्टार्ट करना है। नाउ लेट्स रीस्टार्ट। बेस्ट ऑफ लक। नमस्कार।
Good day everybody. We will be starting the chapter 16, Management of Natural Resources for Science, grade 10. And in this chapter we'll be talking about the natural sources. Now, natural resources are those resources that we usually find in the nature. And in this chapter we'll be studying about the forest, about the wildlife, and also about water and coal and petroleum. Now, when we have to understand the definition of natural resources, we will have to see that natural resources are the resources available in nature like air, water, sunlight, soil, minerals, forest, wildlife, and so on. And they are of two types. Renewable natural resource are those resources which can be replenished in a short period of time like air, water, sunlight, and forests. Now there is another one, that is non-renewable natural resources. These resources cannot be replenished in a short period of time like minerals, coal and petroleum, natural gas, metals, because they take millions of years to be formed. There is a word called as replenish. Replenish is to make plenty. It will be very easy to understand the word replenish, that is to make plenty again. Fine. Now we will have to understand, in order to save our environment, we have to understand that there are 3 R's that we should be worried about. Now these 3 R's are reduce, recycle, and reuse. When we talk about reduce, it means that using less of natural resources and avoiding wastage of natural resources. When we talk about recycle, it means the materials like paper, plastic, glass, metals are used for making things can again be used for making new things instead of synthesizing or extracting new paper, plastic, glass, or metals. Now we talk about reuse. It means using things again and again, like the plastic bottles in which we buy jars, pickles, and that can be used for storing the things in the kitchen. Now there is a need for management of natural resources, as many of our resources are getting depleted or are getting spoiled. So what are we supposed to do? So now what we do is, first we need to understand that all the things we use and consume are obtained from natural resources. Due to increase in population, industrialization, and urbanization, the demand of natural resources is increasing and their availability is limited. The proper management of natural resources consists of the judicious use of natural resources, long-term planning, the exploitation of natural resources, and the safe disposal of wastes. So let us start with the natural resources, forest. Now, forests are plenty number of trees. Are just number of trees? No, they are just not the number of trees. They are also animals in it there. And as we can see that forests are biodiversity hotspots. The importance of forest is that it preserves biodiversity. Forests are natural habitats of plants and animals. They provide timber, wood, fuel, medicines, and fodder. They maintain ecological balance, control climate and rainfall, prevent soil erosion, and also control floods. They maintain the oxygen and carbon dioxide balance in nature. Now, we are supposed to understand a term called as stakeholders. Now, what is the stakeholders? Stakeholders are those people who are associated with the forest directly or indirectly. And who are those? Let's see. People living in and around the forest, industrialists who use the raw materials from the forest department of the government, and the nature and wildlife organization, those who plan to protect our environment. Now, we are supposed to conserve our forest. How this can be done? It can be done with the help of afforestation, that is planting of more trees, preventing or reducing deforestation, and preventing overgrazing by cattle, by setting up wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, biosphere reserves, and so on, undertaking social forestry programs like Van Mahotsav, Chipko movement for planting and protecting trees on a large scale. Now let us get along with the next natural resource, that is the wildlife. As we can see that wildlife also needs to be protected. We usually get lots and lots of things from the wildlife. Wildlife includes all the animals which live in the forest, and there are many more things that are there inside the forest which give us so many things. So what are the importance of the wildlife? Wildlife helps to preserve biodiversity. Wildlife helps to maintain food chains and food web. We get useful products from wildlife like food, medicine, leather, bones, honey, lac, and so on. Now, we are supposed to conserve the wildlife. There are many activities of the humans which actually threatens the wildlife. Now, how do we conserve the wildlife? Preserving the natural habitats of animals, banning poaching of animals. So what is this poaching? Poaching is the illegal hunting of animals in the forest. Now, let us understand also about how to protect the endangered species of animals. Endangered species of animals are those which are almost going to get extinct due to excessive hunting, or maybe because they are not capable of adapting to the environment because of the sudden changes there in the nature. Now, there is another one, that is setting up of wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, biosphere reserves, which are governed by certain rules and regulations of the country, and they help in the conservation of wildlife. Now the next natural resource to talk about is water. Now water is a basic necessity for all living things. We use water for many things. Without water, it is so tough to survive. Now there will be many uses of water. Now water is used for agriculture, for transportation, for construction of buildings, roads and dams. And one more thing that is there, water is a natural habitat for aquatic organisms. In order to save water and in order to manage water, what are we supposed to be doing? We are supposed to see that it is managed properly, and one of the mega projects that are built, they are made and they are taken care by the government. We are talking about dams. Now dams take huge amount of money to build. It takes time, and also it has lots and lots of issues. But at the same time, it provides us with hydroelectricity. Now, what are the advantages of dams? That it is used for irrigation of crops, is producing electricity, supplying water to towns and cities, and it is also used for controlling floods. Now, one of the major disadvantages that is there for dams, or let's say a few disadvantages are there for dams, that is, it has social problems. When we talk about social problems, it displaces a large number of people who have to rehabilitate. Now there will be economic problems, as it is very expensive and it uses a huge amount of public money. We have also environmental problems due to dams. It causes deforestation and the loss of biodiversity. Fine. Yet there are other methods to save water, especially fresh water that is found especially in rain. So we need to use a term presently now, that is water harvesting. So what is water harvesting? Water harvesting is collecting and storing rainwater for future use. Now the common method of water harvesting are that we digging pits, ponds and lakes, or we build small earthen dams or concrete check dams. We can make dikes, or we can construct reservoirs, and also we can construct a rooftop collecting unit in houses. Now, water harvesting, we need to be concerned about one thing, that we need to make a drainage from the rooftop and we collect it in one place and put it inside a pit which has to be dug earlier. And so what we do is that the pit which is there, we cover it with sand, so there is an absorption of water into the ground. Now let us have a look as to which will be the most best way in order to save water, and that is the underground water. Now underground water, which seeps from the soil into the ground, it has a lot of advantages. Now talking about this, that it does not evaporate easily and it spreads out and recharges the wells. It also provides moisture for irrigation of crops. So finally, whatever water comes through the rain, it usually gets saved in as underground water. Now, talking about coal and petroleum, this is the next natural resource. Coal and petroleum are fossil fuels formed by the decomposition of dead plants and animals inside the earth after several millions of years. They are non-renewable resources of energy. And petroleum reserves presently will last for about 40 years, and coal reserves may last for another 200 years. Now, coal and petroleum contain carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and sulfur. When they are burnt, they release carbon dioxide and oxides of nitrogen and sulfur. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas which causes global warming. Now, the concerned things that we should be really worried about, that is the oxides of nitrogen and sulfur, because when they combine with moisture in the air, they can produce acid rain. We have sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. What they do? The moisture which is present in the atmosphere, it gets mixed up, and then they produce hydrochloric acid and sulfuric acid. Though it is dilute in nature, yet when it comes down, it destroys vegetation. And it also have adverse effects on monuments. And the changes in the environment also has issues regarding melting of polar ice, rising the sea levels. Now, to conclude this, let us have a little recap as to what all we have understood in this following chapter. In this chapter, we should remember that we are talking about natural resources. We should be remembering that there are 3 R's we can use to save the environment. Also, we'll have to have a need for management of natural resources. We talked about forests and wildlife, and about water and how to save water. We also talked about coal and petroleum. All these things need to be managed properly so that we'll be able to sustain our earth and also give it to our coming generations. As for now, we'll be winding up this chapter. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.